All right, gentlemen, we're going to continue and finish up Chapter 8, and we spent the first part of Chapter 8 looking at population, trying to understand population in ecological terms, and that led to a discussion about competition, which on a broader scale is a discussion about species interaction within an ecosystem, and so our further understanding, our further study of ecological populations is now going to be to study more specifically the interactions that exist between species within any ecosystem. And so we have here, of course, just a list of topics for this section. That's continued here. Again, your objective questions help you understand conceptually what you need to understand and know within the chapter. All right, the first thing we talk about in looking at these interactions and understanding these interactions is niche. And it's important that we understand and know the definition of niche, because very, very often it is not uncommon at all for students to confuse niche and habitat. There are definitely some overlaps, but niche is unique. And the definition the book gives for niche is the unique position occupied by a species, both in terms of its physical use of its habitat and its function within an ecological community. So niche habitat is strictly going to be where an organism lives. It's strictly physical. Okay, niche is where it lives, what it does, how it does it. What kind of food? When does it eat that food? When does it mate? How does it mate? Does it migrate? All of those types of things. So niche is a much broader category, and habitat actually ends up being a part of niche. Okay, this is explained here. An organism's habitat is its location, it's its place, it's its space. A niche is an organism's pattern or how it uses the habitat. And it's the range of conditions in which a species can survive. There are certain ornamental plants that thrive where I'm from in upstate New York that do not really do well here. And there are plants down in Florida that thrive down in Florida that do not do well here. And so that would be the range of conditions, and that would be the niche of those plants. Now, species are going to have lots of different ways that they interact with each other within the ecosystem. And so, as we do with so many things in science, we categorize, we look at these by different levels, species interaction within populations. And there are 5 major interactions that you're going to need to know and be familiar with. Competition, and competition can also be viewed as kind of a broad, overarching category. Predation, that is a predator-prey relationship. Parasitism, we'll explain what that is. Mutualism, and the 5th being commensalism. Mutualism and commensalism tend to be the 2 that students have the most trouble remembering. I think the other ones are intuitive, and we also are familiar with the terms, but mutualism and commensalism kind of fall outside of that realm. This diagram in your textbook shows and explains everything. I'm just going to go over it briefly. In competition, both species are harmed. What that means is each species negatively affects the other. Okay, in the picture of a southwestern desert type ecosystem, you have the fox and the coyote are both predators of the same prey, which means they are both in competition for a limited food source, and so that negatively affects each other. If the fox gets the food source, the coyote is negatively affected. If the coyote gets the food source, the fox is negatively affected. Now, we also have predation and parasitism. In both predation and parasitism, one of the species always benefits and one of the species is always harmed. In general terms, species A feeds on species B. In predation, it's very simple. The coyote eats the kangaroo rat. So the coyote, and that's predator-prey, that's predation. The coyote is benefited, and obviously the kangaroo rat is harmed, okay? Parasitism is basically the same thing, although parasites don't kill the host, okay? Like a tapeworm. The tapeworm is feeding off of whatever the host may be, a cow, a human, but the tapeworm doesn't prey on, the tapeworm doesn't kill that host. Mutualism is where they are both benefited. Okay, species A and species B are benefited, so each species helps the other. In the diagram in the picture here, you've got the yucca moth, which gets benefit and benefits the yucca plant. Okay, the yucca moth pollinates, lays eggs on the yucca flowers. Moth larvae spread the yucca seeds. So that would be mutualism. And then commensalism, one is benefited and the other is unaffected. So one gets a benefit, but the other species doesn't have any harm, doesn't have any positive. In the example here, you've got the wren, which makes a nest on the cactus, and so the wren benefits from the cactus being there within the ecosystem, but the wren does not necessarily provide any benefit to the cactus. These are all examples of the interactions that we're talking about within populations, within communities, within ecosystems. And to flesh this out a little further, we look at species interactions and categories based on causes of benefit or causes of harm. Who is receiving harm, who is receiving benefit, who is receiving neither, okay? We recognize as ecologists that there's lots of other interactions that are possible. We're just getting the basics here, but there's all kinds of interactions that certainly happen within an active ecosystem. Okay, and then there's all the interactions that are between species but are indirect. There are interactions that don't fit really well into a neatly defined category. And then there's interactions that seem possible but don't ever seem to happen in our observations. So there are lots of interactions that exist in ecology that we don't categorize, we don't study, we don't know as well. Competition, as we said, relationship between two species. Both species attempt to use the same limited resource so that both are negatively affected. There's only so much food. Both species are trying to eat it. Also, you can have members of the same species compete with each other for the same limited resource, okay, because they're in the same niche. And when you have members of different species compete, we say that their niches overlap. So it's important that you really understand what a niche is, because a lot of this discussion is driven by whether they're in the same niche or whether their niches overlap, so on and so forth. There's also what we call indirect competition, where we can have species compete. Even, let's use food sources because that's the easiest to wrap our minds around. Species compete, even compete for the same food source, but never come in direct contact with each other. In the picture you saw, the fox and the coyote could be in direct contact with each other, even fighting over a food source. But you have other situations where you have, say, one insect feeds on a certain plant during the day and the other feeds on the same plant during the night. So there's never any direct contact. There may be, as we could say, some niche overlap because it is the same food source, but they're indirectly competing for that food source. Humans and insects are a great example of this because humans rarely interact with insects, but insects will eat the food that we eat, take out crops. And that would be indirect competition. We also, within our study of ecology, see what we could call adaptations to competition, where you have two species that have very similar niches, are placed together and in the same ecosystem, and we would expect in our understanding of ecology to see one out-compete the other, and therefore one species be more successful than the other. But what we see is that their niches overlap and they're able to work with each other within that niche, within that ecosystem, to actually allow both to get what they need from the resource. And one way we see this is you have the niche, but you divide space or you divide time. And so we can see this. We actually have an example, these types of barnacles that have been observed, and they both can survive in the same depth in tidal pools on the coast, but when one is present, the other one restricts its space so that they both have kind of like an equal share. So they reduce their niche so that there's niche for the other one as well. And we can see this in this diagram here. The red ones, which are smaller, when there's no competition, they would take that whole depth, okay, the rock from the water surface all the way up. But when the larger barnacles are present, the blue, okay, the red ones will actually reduce their niche size so that there's space for the blue ones, because the blue ones will not go and will not survive as high as the red ones. So instead of there being competition, and what would probably happen if there was competition, the red ones would overtake the blue ones. The red ones just reduce what space they need. They reduce their niche, or they restrict their niche, and leave that space open for the blue ones to be in. Okay, predation. When I say predation, you need to think predator-prey. Two species, one species, the predator feeds on the other species, the prey. This results in death. This is the one, basically one eats the other, okay? And you guys saw the food web. Food webs are complex. Predator can be the prey of another species. A predator may eat lots of different species, may have lots of different prey. Okay, so this is very, very complex. And then we see these predator-prey interactions. You've seen a lot of these. Within the videos that we watched, where prey have some developed aspect, some design aspect, some niche aspect that allows them to defend against the predator. Of course, it doesn't always work for them, but we do see this. Prey are not generally left helpless in terms of the predator-prey interaction. And then we have interesting situations where we have certain predators in ecosystems that only eat a specific prey, do not eat lots of different prey. And what we tend to see as we study populations, because that relationship is so close, population size tend to increase and decrease together. You can see this with the snowshoe hare and the lynx. The lynx generally just eat the snowshoe hare. And so we see when the lynx population goes up, it's because the snowshoe hare population went up. And when the lynx population goes down, it's because the snowshoe hare population went down. And if you look at these lines, generally what happens is the snowshoe hare population increases first, and then a little bit later, you see the lynx population follow. And then the snowshoe hare population decreases, and then a little bit later, you'll see the lynx population decrease, so on and so forth. So that's an interesting side note of the predator-prey relationships that exist. Next is parasitism. The way you understand parasitism, guys, it's the same thing as predator-prey, except the parasite does not eat the thing. It wants the thing to stay alive. We call the thing the host. When you have an organism that lives in or on another organism and feeds on that organism, it's called a parasite. We can include ticks and fleas and tapeworms and heartworms, blood-sucking leeches. Any of those types of things would be considered parasites. They do not want their food source to die, because then they have to find another one. Again, the food source is referred to as the host. Okay? It's a relationship between two species. The parasite benefits from the other species, the host, and usually harms the host. Usually the host is going to be sick. It's not going to be well, but it doesn't kill the host, because if the parasite kills the host, it's got to actually find another host, or else it will die. And so the difference, again, between parasite and predator: parasite spends some of its life in or on the host. Parasites do not usually kill the host. The longer the host can live, the better the parasite does. Now, part of what we see is because the parasite is doing what it does to the host, the host ends up being exposed to more disease because the immune system is weakened, and sometimes the host dies anyway. But this is not by a direct effect of the parasite. This is by a corollary effect. Next is mutualism. When species depend on one another for survival, when neither organism can survive by itself, when they both benefit from each other, okay, we call that mutualism, a relationship between two species in which both species benefit. Bacteria in our intestines is a mutualistic relationship. The bacteria gets nutrients and nutrition from the stuff that we eat. It actually helps us digest stuff that we would not normally be able to digest. Okay, when your bacteria are off in your gut, you don't feel good. Okay, that's exactly, if you take antibiotics because you have a bacterial infection, you wipe out the bacteria in your gut, one of the side effects of antibiotics is diarrhea. Now your gut's not working the way it should. Termites and bacteria have this mutualistic relationship as well. Termites eat wood, except for the fact that termites can't digest wood. But termites have bacteria in their little tiny guts, and the bacteria digest the wood and then help the termites get something out of that nutritionally as well. Next was commensalism. This is a relationship between two organisms. One is benefited and the other is unaffected. So if there's one running theme through all these different interactions, guys, there's always at least one species that benefits from the relationship. We have this common scene. We see sharks and the type of fish, little fish airways around them called remoras. Remoras actually attach themselves to the sharks so that the sharks do all the swimming, and then the remoras get to eat the food scraps left over when a shark takes a meal. But as far as we know now, in our understanding, the sharks don't gain any benefit from the remoras. So we would view this as a commensalistic relationship. Symbiosis and coevolution. Symbiosis is a relationship in which two different organisms live in close association with each other. When I was in school, we were taught that symbiosis is a mutually beneficial relationship between two species. It would have been more clearly understood as mutualism, as we've already discussed it. Okay. And this says here it's usually used to describe where at least one species benefits. But the understanding is these two species are so, their niches are so intricately connected that they can't live without the other one. That is really much of the connotation behind the idea of symbiosis. And then there's the theory of coevolution, where symbiosis maybe seems to show this idea where species possibly evolve together so that they are mutualistically related and benefit and can only survive as one goes in one direction, the other goes in the same direction, so that they can stay connected together as well.